Hey everybody, welcome to the DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brendan, and together we make movies with DBS Films. Today's podcast, we're going over part 2 of The Haunting of the Morgan Estate. And honestly, I'm enjoying reviewing it right now because it's kind of showing us how we are improving, how we are getting better, how there's going to be more bad than good. As always, be sure to take a look at our movies online: The Haunting of the Murder House, Into the Forest, The Girl in Cabin 13. Those two are free on Tubi. And always be sure to check out our Discord channel. That's where we make movies for our fans, with our fans. We literally are casting over 20 people on our next film, which is absolutely amazing, from the Discord. So if you want to be part of the action, if you want to be part of the fun, be sure to check it out. So that being said, as I was kind of mentioning, just going through it now is really fun and being able to pull the scenes apart. But we're starting to see, I think the theme of last episode was more good than bad finally, and you can increase the production, but guess what? That's the easiest thing to increase.
Yeah, I mean, we still fall into a couple of pitfalls here, but they're easier pitfalls to fix. So we can move some things around. We can, get punchier pop scares, and especially now, we've made what, 4 movies? We're going on 5 movies since this one, and just in that limited span, I know exactly how to fix these. Like, I'm looking back on this, I'm like, oh, rookie mistake here, rookie mistake here, rookie mistake here. But I know exactly how to fix this movie. And I think that's just a skill in itself, because now if I ever wanted to work with other writers, or if I wanted to work with another director as a producer on a project, I'd be like, look, he gives me this script to say, nope, too much dialogue here. The pacing's off here. Move this scare here. Amp this up. Try and raise the stakes here. So having that skill to be able to analyze these movies and know how to fix them just on a screenplay basis is a huge skill. So, yes, I agree with what Kel said. We do a lot of good in this movie, and this is probably the first movie where we have more good than bad. That being said, it does fall into a lot of pitfalls that are very difficult to get out of, and I think a lot of people just didn't, or turned off this movie because of those pitfalls. But if you're following our philosophy, and our philosophy is we want to make a 1.0 version of a movie, we want to make a 2.0 version of the movie, we want to make a 3.0 version of the movie. Very easy to fix these pitfalls in 2.0, remove as many pitfalls as we possibly can, and we're still probably going to make mistakes. And that's where the 3.0 version of this movie comes in, which should be, if you're doing 3 of one movie, we haven't even got to that stage yet. But when we do, I think it's going to be a very clean, solid movie.
Completely agree. And I mean, I'm very excited for that process because just going through it and reviewing, we already have a pretty decent outline. So let's pick up where we left off, which is she found herself the camera. And now I think we mentioned about this in the production one, that it was like she was a painter first. And I still think you could kind of get away with that. Like that could be a cooler one too, but again, we just didn't have the effects for painting or things like that. But basically we used the camera in developing the photo for the twist, which we'll get to. But basically she finds the camera, it's calling to her, kind of. I wouldn't say there's anything that hints at that. We probably would have done more of like a ghost pulling her now that I think about it. But she finds the camera, she starts taking pictures. I mean, honestly, again, I think it's an anti-scare because nothing happens in the attic, and you kind of want to pay off of sorts to some degree. But then we go into the montage of them taking pictures, and I think, as a plot device, as an element, again, lukewarm.
Yeah. No, I think, look, here's a way to easy fix this scene, because we've done movies before. Have the door open up, leading her up to the attic. I think we actually have that. I think the door does open up and she goes up in the attic. She's like, oh, is someone up here? Jake, you up here? Eli, you up here? No one's up there. Turn the lights off. So there's no lights. It's very dark. Maybe she's using her camera or her light on her phone to move around. So you kind of get like that first person perspective kind of thing. And then, let's do what we did in the murder house. Have a box or something fall down almost onto her from the top of the frame. Great pop scare. Have something shatter. Have like a piece of glass in there shatter. And she's like all freaked out. She looks down and there's the camera. That pop scare will be much better. You're in the dark, so you can't really see anything. You're getting the first person view, which is always way more engaging. And something falls out of the top of the frame. The top of the frame is a great way to place your pop scares, because nobody ever thinks that something's going to come from the top of the frame. Glass shattering, great audio scare. So right off the bat, with just these small little changes, you could take something that was all right, okay, doesn't really add anything to a really good sequence, a really good pop scare. And I think that'll just highlight, oh look, the camera's right here. This must be an important item. And she picks it up, she's curious, and she finds out that it actually works. So this is just, having these examples of, doing multiple movies, stuff we've done in the past, taking what I've learned and bringing it back. This is how we would do the 2.0 version. 2.0 version is just that much spicier by making these small little changes.
Completely agree. I mean, it's just those little tweaks there, and you can see it, and it puts it in so much frame. When it's on paper, it can be anything. It can go one way or the other. When you see it, when you see what works, what doesn't work, super easy for you to move through for that. So we go there, and I think we go to another. This is one of the biggest issues, in my opinion, to this movie. She goes into the garage. There's looking for stuff in the garage. She bounces up. Oh, there's Jake again. Right there, pop scare. And at this time, he's popped up 3 times. He's been the tension. He doesn't really say much. He's like, don't break the camera. She tries to engage with him again, being all red herring and whatnot. But with that being said, I mean, man, these are some brutal pop scares in the sense that we're kind of go back to the same well, and it's been dry ever since it started.
Yeah, I think if we were to do this again, I think if you make the camera pop scare punchier, I don't think you need this pop scare here. And if you wanted to do this pop scare, continue with the camera montage. Have her doing, flashes with the camera in the house, and maybe go to the garage, and all of a sudden lights turn off and she's using the camera flashes to navigate the garage. And she does a flash, and maybe she sees the ghost girl for a little bit, and she's like, whoa, what is that? And does another flash, and maybe you see like another shadowy figure, and then she turns and does another flash, and then you have Jake right in front of her. Much better scare. It's still kind of cheap a little bit, but I think number one, you can introduce the ghost girl and the paranormal element of the camera earlier in the movie, which is always better. You're showing that this is a horror movie, that paranormal stuff is happening. And I think you'll get a better scare with Jake there as well. So once again, just little things that you can do. Put it in the dark, have the lights off, and you'll just have a better movie. These are just small things that just come from experience, though.
Completely agree. So we go from there in that pop scare. We have her walking around, and we kind of find the red room. I mean, the red room's fine, just kind of again to establish that it's there for the first time and that there is film. Then she walks back and she talks to Eli, drinking some Jack or brandy or whatever after a long day, looking in cool lighting. And that's basically another downbeat because then they get to the attic. But I mean, these scenes move. There's action. There's not much dialogue there. She walks up to the scene. The scene looks interesting. You can feel how stressed Eli is from Ethan. So, I think these are good plot progressors in the sense of the needed downbeats. You show the photo room. You show where that's going to happen. You highlight Eli being stressed out, and perfectly fine. I think above lukewarm, above
Yeah.
average.
I mean, I think you're completely correct. Like, this is an example of things that we do well. All three of these scenes transition very well. They make sense. They move the movie forward. I love the conversation with Eli and Meg. I think that's an example of a downbeat that has stakes. It has interesting dialogue. You're talking about his brother. You can see that he's stressed. It moves the story forward with minimal dialogue. There's not a lot of downbeat here. Everything they're saying is pushing the movie forward. So I think we do a really good job here. This is an example of a 3 little sequence set here that did a really good job moving this movie forward, explaining plot, and just I think we did a really good job with this sequence. I wouldn't change anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it just shows again that the easiest way to make your movie move is actually moving the scenes. Don't be static and continue to push it. And you have cool lighting too. You go from the red room to the green dark mist room, really, really good stuff in the sense of pushing it forward and highlighting the good. And then from there, we have what I think is the best pop scare of the entire scene. So you go from three really good beats, you're building tension, and honestly, this is exactly when you want to hit them with a scare. Your guard's down. I just easily glided through three down beats. It doesn't actually make a lot of sense if you're like, well, shouldn't she like gone to sleep or whatnot? Because she wakes up after it. Like if you really wanted to do it, because we basically just said she walks off scene and goes there. But guess what? It's a dream. I get to say whatever I want. So I'm completely covered. So it's bulletproof in this sense. So you hit these three scenes that glide through, and you go to the scene where she goes into the attic. She uses the camera to take a picture. And as you take the pictures, the ghost progressively goes at her. And then she grabs her from behind and says, "Help me," which furthers the plot. So I would probably, now that we're watching it scene by scene, I think this could potentially be the best force sequence that we have of scenes, in the sense of you have a downbeat and then you have the escalation of it through tension and then you hit them with the scare.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Is it shot very well? Not really. Is it the best like production value? Not really. But we're doing something in the dark, which is great. We're using the camera, which is great because this is the tool that Meg needs to use. And for the first time, we have the ghost show up and say, "Help me. Something is wrong. You need to help me." And I think the only change I would make is I think she should see this ghost more before this scene. So this should almost be like, "Hey, I think your house is haunted." Like that's what she should be thinking. And then this scene would be punchier because this is saying, "Okay, this house is definitely haunted, but the ghost wants my help." And it's like, "Whoa, all right, so we're going from a horror movie to maybe a horror movie with a little bit of mystery element. What does the girl want, help with?" And I think that this adds just that second layer of spice where you're not just getting a horror movie, now you got to solve this mystery. And I think a lot of people like that kind of stuff. It's a more sophisticated horror movie. So I think if you had just brought up the ghost girl a little bit more, because we really only show her in the dream sequence. If you show her a little bit more and develop that just a little bit more, so I think that the help me thing that we do right now would have more impact and people, because this is right around the halfway point of the movie, which is, great placement. But I think you really got to nail this, that, hey, this house is haunted and you shouldn't be afraid, but you should be willing to help me as the ghost. And I think that would have really, got people to stick around for the second half of the movie.
It really is, you really start taken off in the sense of it's moving the pace. We're done with kind of the hallmark passive scares. You understand there's help me. So they she wakes up, and honestly, I remember we're like, whoa, how do we get Eli out of here? Because this was back in the day where, like, we just keep having days and nights and days and nights. Because I think that was one of the tropes that we fell into, again, using dream scares, but like realistically, you shouldn't be using those more than one. But look at us go. So he wakes up and Eli's not there. So he left a little note. So it's just her by herself. The door opens. So it kind of leads her this way. The papers fall over. You hear a noise and she discovers them. I love how it's almost like a video game noise. It's like da na na na, like this little jingle to it. And like honestly, and she finds the missing person and she prints it out. So like that whole sequence there is like a downbeat. And like as I would say like average, not lukewarm in the sense that it's not really too bad, but it moves. She's doing stuff. And I think this is an example. She's not even talking, she's just walking around, and it's 1,000 times more engaging than sitting down on a couch and telling the plot. And her walking around, finding the missing person, finding the image. She says like a few things, like she confirms the person's name, and then she goes like, "Gotcha, girl," to like be like, "Oh, they got something." And it's perfect in the sense of that's so much better. So that's just, again, production, we can improve it a lot, but you're seeing a good construct of a plot device that moves it forward in the way you should do it versus just sitting there, plopping a camera down and talking.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely, like, the easiest thing to fix on this is production value. We could shoot it in a much better way. We could, just probably lay it out, like the layout and the way we shoot this, and the way we block it out could be much better. But it's solid. Like it gets the job done. It's engaging. There's small little paranormal elements happening. Um, I think the biggest part now looking at this movie is like we have to find a more clever way to get Eli out of the picture. And he doesn't really need to leave the house, but he needs to just not be there. And him just casually walking away, during this whole thing multiple times is kind of a plot hole that I think we need to tighten up. And like this stuff, I consolidate the days. I think it's just too many days there at this place. And I think that this stuff should be happening at night. I don't know how we would do that, but like all the spooky stuff should be happening at night. We should minimize the day stuff because you just have her doing her work during the day. But you're going to have that plot hole where Eli just keeps disappearing. But for the most part, this is an active downbeat, but it's really more active because you have her walking around doing stuff. She's solving the mystery. And really, for the first time, I was so concerned that people wouldn't understand what was going on here, but they did. Everyone knew exactly what was going on. They were engaged, and you know, like Kel said, it's lukewarm. It's not a pitfall or something bad, but it's not the greatest, but it moves the plot forward. And this is like always be moving the plot forward. And we did a great job here.
Yeah, really, when you're a thriller, you have two levers. Like the plot itself as a mystery should be essentially something that's like activating it, and then like you have the scares. So we go from there, and then we have our boy Jake out there gardening. So we cut to him. She's watching around there. She goes out there. Oh my gosh! I just looking at the scene. I'm getting flashbacks to the audio of like how we were hearing that when we were doing the editing of it. It's like, have you seen this person? Jake in his suspicious ways, like, no, haven't seen her. So then she's like, all right, well, I guess I'm done here. She goes to the red room because, again, red room's cool. We're navigating this. And then the projector goes on and we get a bunch of flashes. And then it stops on the brother. And then she goes, Ethan. And again, great. You know what I mean? Like, so you combine the lukewarm and again, I'm saying great in the structure wise, production, execution obviously can be much better, but like that's a really good flow again. So, I mean, really, when we're talking on this movie from part one and part two, the only time we really narrowed in, we're like, this is dead man's land, and we did everything we could to fix it was that couch scene. Cause there's sustenance here. You're getting the story now.
Yeah. So I think the Jake thing just needs to be done better. I think the dialogue needs to be better. It's her really questioning, what's going on here. She's putting two and two together. The ghost girl is this girl. What happened to her? And if you make the J character more menacing, like literally looks like a hitman, he's the cleaner, and she should know that. And she should come up to him and be like, yo, if anything bad happened to this girl at this place, you know what it is. And I think the goal of that scene should be number one, she's thinking that this guy killed them or covered it up or something. And then you want Jake to kind of look at her and be like, yo, this girl's going to be a problem. Like she's digging, in areas where she shouldn't be digging, and she could be a liability. So that should raise the stakes of the movie that, Meg is like thinking that, all right, look, this guy could kill me. I'm in this house. I know someone got murdered. And then Jake should be like, hey, if this girl finds out what really happened, I'm gonna have to kill her. So now you have life and death at stake. And I think that would have raised the tension in the movie. With how he did it, it was like, have you seen this girl? No. Okay. It's just flat. It's not punchy dialogue. There's no stakes. It's pushing the plot forward. It's pushing the movie forward. But once again, now with more experience, I can go in there and write better dialogue and make a very impactful scene, especially if Jake is like slowly moving closer and closer to her to be just more and more intimidating as she's pushing him a little bit more. So with blocking, better dialogue, and just put it in like a place at night. He's just literally out there in the yard in the sunlight. Like just we could put it in a scarier location. But then she goes to the red room, and I really like this scene. I think the projector scene is great. Is it done well? No. Once again, like we could easily fix this with better production, but I think it's cool. I think it confirms what she's saying. It shows that she has some communication or level of communication with the ghost. And I think if I think we had the pop scare, the light bulb breaking in there, but, like, it never really hits. But I think if you can add a scare here, or just make it, a little bit more impactful would be, like, my only note on the projector scare. I think it's fine. I think it moves it forward. It shows that she's communicating with the ghost, which is really just the goal of this scene.
Yeah, it really is something where, the structure's there, you can easily improve on it, and it just kinda highlights the improvement level that we're getting. So, we have the information there that shows that there's classmates. She goes and she finds the folder, and that brings up her classmate that they didn't have the interview scene. I think what's great here is this scene right here where it's basically interviewing the classmate to be like, "What happened to her?" and getting that information. I would say that this is the direct, um, side effect of Into the Forest and The Haunting of the Murder House, or The Haunting of the Suicide House. And the reason for that is we do this in The Morgan Estate, and we do this in The Devil in the Room, and we do it twice. If you look at it, you have Jake and you have, her you have basically Eli the second time, but we tell the plot twice at different points, like straight up in these different scenes. So we have the character, they basically sit down, they explain who it was, they start pointing the fingers, saying, oh, they have people who are on payroll, Jake, to basically go ahead and do things for them. They're powerful. The Morgans are covering it up. He was abusive, all of these things to just paint Ethan as the candidate for it and make a lot of sense. And this is just a back and forth. You're at the park, so there's something going on there. But realistically, with that being said, it works because the dialogue actually moves. So it's a basic scene again, but the dialogue moves, so it carries it. Would you want to add motion? Is she trying to maybe stop her or ask her? Would there be more confrontation? Yeah, that'd probably be way better of a scene. But this to me is improving and showing that if you just get the structure right, your scenes are going to work so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think, you're just seeing that, like, us learning from our past movies and just getting better as we go through. So, I mean, it just comes down, you gotta make a lot of movies. I think that the people who or the screenwriters and filmmakers who make their first movie and it's a roaring success are, one in a million. And usually, if you go back and you look at the experience of the filmmaker, they've done either a lot of commercial work, they've done a lot of work on other sets, or they've done a lot of screenwriting in the past. So, like, they're just coming off a really good script and they just get a really good producer, really good DP to really kind of iron out that process. I think, for a filmmaker to come in here, especially doing something low budget with no outside producer help like we do, our odds of doing a one hit wonder are almost zero. I mean, hell, we're 12 movies in and, it's still, we're just learning at an exponential rate. So, you really just have to be able to do a lot of these things. You have to learn from your mistakes, try not to repeat those mistakes, but then pull stuff that you do well and try and just get better with each and every single movie.
Yeah, it ends up, compounding again at this point, like I said, really that dead man's land of the first few downbeats when nothing action dialogue was happening, which you could replace with this Jim having like a fun time, completely works there. So we have this, and then we have, guess what? Our favorite scare, Jake is back. So they're walking there. He like walks up to her. They have a really awkward conversation. Then they open the door. He looks at her for a little bit. Um, do you just want to like, I think where we're at now, because we don't have like the budget for like more intense special effects or monsters or things like that. But I mean, honestly, you look at what we're doing in the later ones, so it's not even that. It's just, you have to understand your scare. Again, it doesn't work the first time when he pops up. He's just, to me, it's awkward at this point in time. So I think it is something to kind of, he's better to be there than to not be there, in the sense and I have had people give reviews like, oh, he gives such a bad vibe or whatever. But like, I mean, if we missed at the first Jake and then we didn't miss on the second Jake or the third Jake or the fourth Jake, I mean, how many times is Jake just going to randomly appear and be scary to the audience? It's almost something where, I always feel like once you show the monster, there's a fine amount of times you can show the monster more before it's just like, oh, there it is. So I just want to kind of touch on that and how you're feeling with the Jake scares, because I wouldn't even count it as a pop scare. It's more of just like a tension builder, but like realistically, there should have been a scare there.
Yeah, I think this movie just it needs to have Eli Morgan's brother Ethan as a wild card, because if you have him in this movie, then you have an excuse to have a whole bunch of other pop scares. And this guy could be creepy, he could be crazy, he could be drugged up. There's a lot of tension and stakes that you can get through him. I think Jake just needs to be refined as a character. I said it before, he needs to be like a Herman Trout character. Just he'll kill you no matter what. You look at him wrong, he'll kill you. And I think you can still utilize pop scares with him, but like you have to balance it. And I really think that you have to really lean on the ghost girl a little bit more. Um, if you show her once, which we've done, and you're showing that she's non-violent, then she really doesn't become a crazy pop scare, but she can lead the tension, and you can have some scares still with her, especially if you have a scare and then show a clue, like what we tried to do in the projector scene. It would have been better if we had a scare and then showed a clue. So I think the problem is we just had Jake too many times here. I think if you spread it out between those three, I think you'll just have a much cleaner, better script.
It's really true. I mean, being able to basically capitalize on the things that are working, what's not working, and being able to just nail it down to kind of what we're mentioning right now is super critical. So she goes up, and then we have another research scene. I know this was one that I think we kind of went back and forth the most on, in the sense of like, is this good? Is this fine? But I think with what we had with an indie production, the thing falling over and revealing a code or whatnot in like a letter, I think it's perfectly fine. You revealed the big finale or the big twist that she was pregnant. So this is our first thriller, mystery thriller, I would say, where like we did like clues and whatnot. And like honestly, now that I'm looking at it, I think we did a lot better than we were expecting. But I think that comes down to because we just understood how a movie should be filmed. So I don't think it's because we're good at a thriller. I just think because the same things are happening. We talked about it, like horror and rom-coms, a pretty similar genre. If you just replace, the thrills with like the relationship tension, and the horror. So, I'm just real quick. What do you think about the research we've been doing in the clues stuff? But it's not really necessarily fully horror. But I thought we did a really good job in executing a little mini mystery in here, and the mystery helps pull it through as well too.
Yeah, I mean, people like these movies, the little horror mystery movies. But I mean, like, if we were any other studio at this point, we probably would have never made this script, because I remember for at least 2 weeks, we couldn't figure out how to get her the password to the laptop. We just couldn't figure out how to do it. And we had brainstorming sessions, and we had everyone try and figure out like what was going on. And then we just went with the most basic thing, which is the box falls over. And because I had to make a movie, like I was gonna push it out. We were in the process of pre-production. And looking back on it, it's fine. Like, but if I was just writing this as a screenplay to submit as a spec script, I probably would never finish it, because I'd been like, I just can't think of anything. So it shows you like, give every problem that you come up a little bit of time. Try and find some way to just get the script made or the movie made, and try and do better next time. Like, really the most important thing is that this thing gets made and uploaded. Does If we had something better than a box falling down, yeah, it would have been probably better for the movie. But the box falling down is fine. Nobody brought it up. And we have a completed movie that we can get feedback on, that we can get revenue from. So instead of just being a bunch of papers in my drawer somewhere, we have an uploaded project. And I think that's just kind of how, as an indie filmmaker, you gotta power through these things. Just go with the one that's going to cause, or the issue or the solution that's going to cause the least resistance, and just focus on making this movie.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's so true when you boil it down to that and you get it done. It allows you to understand and have something you can push back to. And a lot of times, usually the biggest things we kind of like worry about never even gets brought up. So it's really one of those things where just get the movie done and moving forward. So you have that, and then you have what, in my opinion, it still works, to some degree because I think, our actors are really good and they're able to carry it, but a really awkward scene, in my opinion, dialogue-wise, that I was always like, "Huh?" And this kinda goes back to, like, in the writing process, like, "Well, this seems really intense." But basically, Meg confronts Eli and is like, "Hey, are you sure your brother didn't kill this chick?" Like, it's a pretty straight up scene, like, "Are you sure he didn't murder anyone?" He's like, "Ah, I know he's not a murderer," or whatnot. So it's a very straightforward scene in my opinion. I was worried about it in kind of the writing phase where I was like, "Oh, is this pretty on the nose with it?" But you know what? No one's ever mentioned anything about it. It moves really well. It addresses the issue, and it kind of allows Eli to dodge it because the scene right after, it's Jake. So she basically says, "Okay, Eli has nothing to do with it. It's Jake." So it really does serve its purpose. But to me, it's kind of like a quick, weird one. But again, it's quick and to the point, so it doesn't drag and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think maybe if you do the Jake one first and then confront Eli, it might be better. I don't know how to do this in a way where it's not as aggressive because she needs to confront him. Like it needs to happen. So I don't know how you do that without it being too bad. Watching the movie, I thought it was fine. Like it's just a tough thing. Like you have to bring it up, and I don't know. It's almost like if you're in a fight in a relationship and the person's like beating around the bush and then they finally like let it out like what they're trying to say would be like the only dynamic that I would probably try and do in that scene where Eli's like, "What are you saying here, Meg? Like, what's going on? What's going on?" And then she's like, "Did your brother kill this chick? Or is there something shadier going on?" And I can't remember how it was done in the movie because I think she goes to Jake and is like, "Hey, if I need to know if there's something with the campaign that's going to be off." And maybe she should have done that with Eli, but then again, I think she should be coming from a place of, "I love you, Eli. Like I see a future with you. I can't be like hanging out with you if your brother's all coked up murdering chicks." Like that's just pretty much like what we can't have. So I think that would be where she's coming from, but I think the conversation has to happen because then she's like checking boxes here. She's like, "All right, something happened to this girl. I know that she was pregnant, and I know Eli didn't do it. Does Eli know that his brother do it?" And he's like, "No, Eli wouldn't do that." So then she's like, "All right, well, Jake has to do it," which leads us to the next scene, which is, I think, a better transition. So I think it can happen. You have to like weave the audience and lead them in different directions to get that mystery element. Could it be done better? Yes. But I don't, out of all the things to nitpick, I don't think this is the one that's, gonna make or break this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it really is the case where it's the little things at this point in time. And you're already moving so far forward that you have inertia that's not slowing you down. So, um, actually, no, she goes and we have the pop scare of Jake. So she goes outside, she sees the dead girl, and she walks out to the shed. She puts her hand there, and Jake pops out. So guess what? Boys scared you 5 times now just by saying, "Hey," and being there. But you know what? This was the best one. It was at night, and then we have a scene now. It's become a staple, and again, this is what I point to with what you learn. We now have a Jake by the lake, and what we refer to with a Jake by the lake is Jake right now, he's by a lake, and he's basically telling the plot, and we essentially use that as, like, a staple now when we're writing scripts to be like, "Where's the Jake by the lake scene? What type of scene is this?" We refer to it because, again, this is a simple pop scare, a simple back and forth. It has such a critical role in your movie. This scene, to some degree, has to occur in your movie, in my opinion. Just because it's critical nowadays. You have to tell the plot to everyone in case they're just barely paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple reasons why this scene is super crucial, and this is the first time we've really done this, and we did it really well. Or I wouldn't say we did it well, but we did it well enough to learn from it and put it in all our other movies. So this scene is right before the climax. The point of this scene is to recap exactly what Meg knows and understand the stakes moving forward, right? So she thinks that someone got murdered. She understands that someone got murdered. She wants to try and find out what's getting murdered. But where we kind of miss is she should leave this conversation with a fear for her life. She should think that Jake is about to kill her. And this is should have been done in like either high up to the point where like on the top of the roof or something, if they had like a outdoor patio deck or something where Jake could have just killed her very easily right there. And I think using him as walking closer to her, just being more intimidating would have been the way to do it. And I think that he should have real or she should have been pushing him so hard that he realizes, oh, this girl is a liability. And she should kind of realize that he realizes that she's a liability. And whether or not she should get killed right there, like he could just throw her off the balcony or just dispose of her there. Or maybe he lifts up his shirt and you see like a gun right there. Just something to really put the stakes of this conversation to where it needs to go. But when she does leave, it should be very, very clear that she knows too much and she's concerned with that Jake killed this girl. And now that she knows all this, he might come after her. That should be heading into the climax of the movie. Her life is in danger. And honestly, if we had a scene in there with Eli's brother before, also kind of like maybe trying to kill her or put her life in danger as well. So you have two elements plus the little ghost girl. Now you have some really good stakes heading into this climax. But really, the big thing with this movie is recapping what she knows, telling the audience what she knows, and setting the expectations for what's about to happen as we transition to the third act and up into the climax.
Yeah, really agree. I mean, it's something where you get the structure, you get it moving, and like in my opinion, if you have these types of scenes in your movie, it will succeed to a degree that we really didn't start seeing until now. And if you take a look at it, we have her friend that was the classmate, we have Jake right now, and realistically at the end, we have Eli. All of them reiterate what the plot was. And I think this is what I love about when you watch all of our movies. You see the big milestones. And this was the big milestone where we're like, we're going to tell this plot at least 3 times directly to you and the character while the character goes through with it. And I think that's so critical nowadays, because people do not watch movies where they give you the full attention. So Jake by the lake happens again. Yeah, she should be fearing for her life. So she's laying down. We have a little bed scene with them, and again I think that's just because we filmed so many bed scenes, we already had it set up, so we're like, all right, we'll add another one. Man, they've really been like, they've been just sleeping. Like, now that I look at it, they've been asleep like 3 different times. Wake up, Eli goes for a nice run in the morning, which is sweet. And then she's basically doing her job. She gets a call from Karen. She's not being able to get everything. The news report comes on. Tragic news. Her brother has overdosed and died. And then basically you have a quick little conversation with Eli and Ethan. I would say structure-wise makes sense. Overall idea of like they can't really announce it because it could be kind of scandalous because maybe she's still working for them, or like I'd have it where Eli just doesn't want her to get caught into the battle. He's like, listen, I just don't want you to get caught up like this. Once I'm governor or whatever, it'll all blow over. It'll be super easy, but like you just don't want any of the smoke until we're done with the election because they're gonna make fun of you and whatnot. They'll do anything. So I think you can run with that angle. But I think the issue with this one is he shows up, he's like, oh gosh, oh no. And then he's also like, maybe you're right. Maybe he did kill that chick, which is just a great line that slipped in there. He's like, maybe you are right. Maybe we can bury it here. And then he basically runs away. So structure overall, all like for the screenplay, yeah, it makes sense having the scene, but I think I got to give this like a little bit below lukewarm. It was kind of a clunker of a way to handle this.
Yeah, it could be done better. I think the overall structure is there. I think the production elements lacking. I think the dialogue elements lacking. I think this should have been done at night. There's nothing stopping her from, what if she got really scared from Jake and she goes back into the house and she's like having thoughts about leaving. So maybe she's like packing up some of her stuff and this is a great place to do a conversation with a friend and be like, hey, like I think something bad's happening here. I'm going to pack up my stuff and I'm just going to get out of here. I don't feel safe here. And as she's doing that, then the news breaks. And then she goes and tells Eli, and Eli's like, all right, well, I'm going to get out of here. Like, I got to handle this stuff. You stay here. I'll be back. And, I'll get my team of lawyers. And in the morning, we could actually like make sense of all this stuff. I think it's at night. It's spookier. It flows a little bit better. But yeah, you need to have better dialogue in this. But I really like condensing these movies now, especially after doing Shapeshifter. when you have day, night, day, night, it kind of slows down the pacing. It's just not as punchy as something like the Murder House, which takes place in one night. Number one, you don't need to have as much wardrobe. Number two, you're not slowing it down with downbeats, and like we have to do these like running montage scenes and like wake up scenes. It just slows the movie down. And I see the same thing with Shapeshifter. Now, Shapeshifter is just a much better written script and much faster, but you kind of see the same thing. So honestly, I'm calling it now. If you're an indie filmmaker, try and do things in 1 or 2 days. Into the Forest takes place within 2 days, and I think it's just going to be a much better movie. It just allows you to move faster, and I think it trains you to move faster because it's like, all right, look, all this stuff has to happen during the day. That's like what needs to happen. So I would say that would just help the movie out if we kind of condense this movie into like 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, it really is. It really is one of those things where like you want to go fast. And I mean, if you look at our movies now, they're just increasing in speed. One night, no nights, we've even talked about like, I mean, we have ideas for concepts where you get there in 5 minutes and you are stuck in the climax mode in the sense of like how everything's moving. So it's really critical for that. Because yeah, again, these are our clunker of scenes, and now there's a lot that goes into it. So if you're enjoying this, go back and listen to our production podcast of basically the details of making it. But essentially from here, there's a lot of scenes that had to get like put together. So she leaves, she's rolling away, she gets the flashes, and it's like, go ahead and like keep going. And now what's interesting is we have the red light scene and the reveal. And what I really enjoy about this is this was the core like nugget of creativity that basically spawned the entire movie. Was there is some type of reveal that shows that the boyfriend is the bad character based on the ghost showing everything and everything happening. So she does the image, she does it in the red room, it develops, and bam, there's Eli with the intro girl. Clearly they had a relationship, and they announce it, and then as soon as you say that, boom, there's Eli in the room, which is just fantastic, and he notices what's developed. And I mean, really, really fantastic scene. And it goes back to something we've mentioned in past episodes where this hits and the rest of the movie hits. But that's because we knew from the very beginning that this is a powerful concept. And when you do start with the end in mind concept like this, once you finally connect the dots, it's like easy street.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think like this movie was written with this ending in mind, this reveal in mind. And I think you just need to bring the tension, the stakes up more before we hit this point. Like she should really think that Eli Morgan did it and the case is solved essentially. And the tension should be relieved. And then the ghost girl's like, No, we still got some work to do here. And I think we just need to do it a little bit better. And I think that a lot of this movie, there's a lot of pitfalls in here. We do a lot of stuff that's just okay. But I mean, if you remove the pitfalls and you do the little things a lot better and you spice up this scene so it really is a punch in the gut, I think you have a really good movie here. I really believe that this will be a very good movie. Now it's kind of obvious. Obviously, this isn't going to be like a Kaiser Soze-esque twist. Like a lot of people should be able to see this coming. But for what we're trying to do, which is just make a movie that you're going to enjoy, a 90-minute movie that you're going to enjoy, I think that this gets the job done. It's clever enough to be like, oh, I never saw that coming, or the audience could be like, oh, I did see that coming, which is also a great reaction because it means that your people are following the plot. So I think, yeah, it just needs to be done a little bit better, but I think the elements are there. I think it's a cool concept. I love the red room. I love the photography. The fact that they're having this conversation that you can't really hear because their audio is so messed up in this scene, but like in this red room where they're both glowing red is just like you could really have a great conversation in here. And I would love to just go back. Once again, we made the mistake of saving this climax for the end. When I would have done this scene probably day 2, when the actors are comfortable with each other and we could really get that awkward, uncomfortable tension that you need, where she knows, he knows, and he knows, she knows. That's what you want. And it could have been done a lot better, but I think for the most part, the structure is there.
Oh yeah. I mean, it really is the case where like again, you don't have to worry about this part. So they go now, there is a lot of duct tape around here in the sense of what we had to do, but basically she gets kidnapped and or chloroformed or whatever the rag was. She wakes up, she's in the garage. This scene to me is just really, really well done. I mean, like it looks good. We finally got like some really good lighting and kind of like it's angled there, but I think it also goes back to like you have those two elements. You have like the actual production of it, which again can always improve, but like the fact that the vocals are so, the dialogue's very interesting. Plot reveal, tension between Jake and Eli. Eli comes into his character, absolutely crushes it here. And he just carries this entire scene. It does the job amazingly. And I think this is probably one of the better executed scenes that we had in the whole movie. Again, you can easily improve it in a lot of different ways, but I mean, I'm a fan of the garage scene. I think it was really well done.
Yeah, I think this is the first time where we had a dialogue scene where it was like spicy all the way through. I thought we did like a really good job with this one. I thought the dialogue was great. There's tension between Eli and Jake, like you said. There's tension between Meg. We delivered the punch where he actually said he did it very well. And I think this is the first time where I was like sitting there being like, all right, like we can actually write these movies. Like we have the ability to do so. We have the ability to make great dialogue scenes because this is almost like a monologue and it's like a 3 or 4 minute monologue. Now, obviously, he's showing primal emotion. He's showing rage. There's fear. There's sadness. All this is primal emotion. So it's very easy for the actors to do this scene. But I love the dialogue. I love the acting in here. I think this is probably one of our better sequences in all of our movies. He's really punchy. Um, and I just remember sitting in that garage being like, oh man, like, we have the ability to make good stuff. We just haven't got there yet. But this is like one of those few glimpses where I'm like, oh, we can do some work. Like we can actually do this. We can make these movies. We can make them actually good.
Yeah. I mean, it is something where, and you can feel it on set too. I mean, we've had those moments, and like when you do have that action packed dialogue element to it, it is going to move the scene. So they hear her scream, she sneaks out. Again, a ton of duct tape just to make this. I mean, you're looking at 4 different locations and you wouldn't even be able to tell. Some of it's me, some of it's you, some of it's another. Like, there's so much stuff here that was just put together. But that's, if we hadn't done all the editing that we've done up to this point in time, it goes back to what we were saying in the first episode. This movie would have been completely different. So we really wrapped that together. And we pulled together with what we barely had of the footage of the actors and of the fight to have our climax. But man, I think the thing that stands out to me the most when watching this entire movie is when I watch this, I'm almost kind of like, man, people don't know how crazy it was to make that sequence a reality. Like they don't, and that's the best thing you could ever hear. It really is, in the sense that like it never really gets brought up or what happened here. But I think for what we had, it is amazing. It is like blown away for what we had to what we made. That being said, obviously, another production, another time, we can easily make it better. But this sequence coming together really was a milestone, in my opinion, of us being able to be like, because we even point back to, we mentioned it in the past podcast. We always point back to anytime something comes up, it's like, we can get a pickup, we can do something, we can scrap this. Cause I mean, that was a jigsaw puzzle going into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we have to just really learn how to actually make these movies, and that's the whole process. It's just learning how to write these movies, how to edit these movies, and how to shoot them. And you're seeing that stuff in here. Um, the climax of this movie just needed to be longer. I think you're losing a lot of stuff. The good stuff that we did in the garage just got lost because we didn't schedule this properly and we didn't, pace it properly. I think you're after this scene where she kind of gets out, you're going, the movie should be a 10-minute cat and mouse sequence. I think that's where it needed to be. I think the movie would have been better, it would have been more intenseful, and you really have this tension. And really in movies, when you have that tension, you kind of want to stretch it out like a rubber band. You want to try and drag it out for as long as you possibly can because it's so hard to get that tension in the first place. And unfortunately, like we lose that tension from the garage scene. We don't drag it out as much as we can, and this is something we're still working on. We really want to learn how to number one, capture the audience's attention with tension, and just doing that is difficult. But when you do capture the tension and you have that suspense, you really want to drag it out as long as you possibly can. And I think that's the difference between like an amateur indie filmmaker and someone like Quentin Tarantino who can actually capture the tension in a scene, the suspense in a scene through dialogue. He's that good, but then he'll hold on to it as long as he possibly can. And a great example of this would be Inglorious Bastards, the intro scene with that scene where the girls are hiding underneath the floorboards. That's like a 3 or 4 minute scene where it's just dialogue driven. It's like, how do you even do this? So I think like obviously we're trying to get to that level, but just for us, just capturing the tension in the scene's big. But once we do have it, we really have to learn how to just draw it out. And I think the way we could have drawn it out in this scene was to, just pace it better, shoot it better, have a better production. Cause a lot of this stuff at the end was just pickups.
Yeah, I mean, it really is something where you just kind of see how it can improve and how it can move forward with that, and just having to have the pickups to basically make it happen. But it came out really good. You have, in my opinion, just enough violence there. And then you have a nice little outro scene of Karen and Meg talking. A little bit of upbeat and hope, and then that kind of gets us to the end. So, what do you think about that outro? Because I think one thing we have learned is like, man, I have to advise it. Like, I think you need to have an outro scene. Like, it just is something where the more we do it and the more we ask about it, specifically with like the Discord recently and whatnot, people love the outro scene for Girl Academy 13, even though it makes negative sense. Like, there's so many things wrong with that scene if you really pick it apart, but people love it. And I think it's something where outro scenes, I would lean heavily on those. So I'm curious about your thoughts on outro scenes and what you thought about this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's epilogues in books for reasons. Like you need to have like a little bit of closure. People like that full circle. Doesn't really make sense that Meg wants to be a politician, and like the way we shot this and the dialogue doesn't really make any sense. Um, but for like our budget, like the only thing I would have is like her actively being in the campaign trail, like almost replicating the intro sequence with the oneers, and then her having, going into her office and having an alone time and just kind of reflecting on, the whole movie and what's going on. Could have been a way to do it. But I like to have them. I think it provides a little bit of closure, a little bit downbeat, especially for this movie, because this was a more mystery thriller and her character had been through so much that I think you have to do it. With like a lot of our horror movies, the outro is just another way to get another scare or to just build the mystery a little bit. But I'm a big fan of just one little downbeat to just keep the audience engaged or just provide some closure for the audience because they went on this crazy journey. The audience deserves just that little bit of satisfaction to show that she went through all this crazy stuff, but it made her stronger. It didn't break her.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, that's kind of like the gist that we're going for. So before we wrap up, as I mentioned, this is one that's kind of on our minds as a 2.0. I think the main overhaul that I would be looking at is, I think, again, you just need two characters, or you need Ethan, who's completely, just ever since the death of his girlfriend in high school, has been off the wagon. And it's almost kind of like you sympathize for him to some degree too. You also make him a red flag, but you basically have him where, he's trying to get better or whatnot, but he thought that he blacked out and murdered his girlfriend. Like you could essentially have that as kind of like the plot thing there. Maybe he comes clean about how he woke up and she was there and Jake did it, and that can spiral out and make him, essentially he's about to come clean with it, and then you have Eli stop him because that would ruin his career if that gets out. So that could be another element to it. But basically, you just, in my opinion, make it so that it looks like it was Jake, and that you look like it was Eli's dad and Jake working together to protect what happened here. You keep Eli out of it that whole time. You have the friend over the phone to kind of cast suspicion about them, add the plot along. But I think if you had Eli and the girl over the phone, and then you have that juicier realm to play in, I mean, it's there. Like, I think that would be one of the easier scripts for us to just crank out, because there's more good than bad in this movie that we have. And I mean, it shows, and being able to watch it gives us, like, I mean, how can you get a better baseline for what you want to do than literally going through this process, making this movie, and then doing what we just did now, talking about each scene.
Yeah, I mean, the benefit of uploading these movies is there's movies that, you feel comfortable with the structure of the story, like the Morgan Estate. And then there's movies that, you're just not there yet, or the structure is a little bit off, or the concept just doesn't resonate with your fans, and you just avoid those movies. And that's perfectly fine. And it's honestly something you should do. Every single one of your ideas isn't going to be a hit. And you should really just try and run with the winners. And the structure of this is there. If you give me a bottle of whiskey in a weekend, I could crank this thing out and have it ready to go. And it's literally almost like a little Netflix movie, little 90-minute thriller. And I think what Kel said is true. I think you just have to have the red herring, which is his brother. You have to show the brother. You have to show that he's a wild card. You have to increase the stakes with Jake. And you can really layer this a lot deeper than what we did. This is a very shallow mystery thriller movie. You can go a lot deeper. And I think that'd be a great 2.0 version. It's a perfect Shutter movie, a little Netflix movie. But I really think a 3.0 version where this is sort of like a House on Haunted Hill, the Mike Flanagan movies. You can really drag this out as like a little mini series, 9 to 12 episodes, really build the characters, really build the plot. So then when you have that photograph reveal, there's just so many more layers, so much more dimension to this movie that it's really impactful. And, it could be a really cool mini series if done properly. But, that's further down the line. Obviously, all our movies would be great as miniseries. That's where I'd love to go. I think that doing the one-off series is just a really cool way to tell a story, because you're allowed to develop the characters and really give the movie and the experience life to breathe. And I think that as you get more attached to the characters, the gut punches that you could throw at the end of the movie are just that much more impactful. But I think for a 2.0 version of this movie, it's really good for Shudder. It's really good for Netflix. And obviously our friends at Tubi, we definitely love it to send it your way. That being said, I don't think it'll be next year that we'll reshoot this one, just because, the more we're talking about it, I really think that, we want to make sure that this has proper production value. It really needs a really cool house, and it really needs, a lot of pieces to tell this story properly. And I think that's just a little bit out of our budget range at this time.
It's getting closer and closer, but then again, it's also one where it's like, man, it's such a good idea. You really do want to do it justice. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. Be sure to take a look at the Morgan Estate online. You can see what we're all talking about right now, but you can also see The Haunting of the Murder House, which is on Amazon, Into the Forest, and The Girl in Cabin 13 are on Tubi. So there's plenty of movies out there you can watch of ours. Be sure to take a look at our Discord channel, though. That is where you want to be. If you want to be in our movies, you want to get cast on our movies, because we make movies for our fans with our fans. So with that being said, hope you guys have a good one.